In this video, I want to cover the 3 biggest mistakes that we see people make in the game of Warhammer 40,000 when it comes to writing their army list. I'm Stephen from Vanguard Tactics, and it's our job to help you become a better 40k commander at the table, and it's all about helping give you that little bit more confidence and also clarity. Now, the game can be extremely overwhelming, and this is especially true for when you can actually come to build out your army and write your army list. So we're going to be covering these 3 biggest mistakes that I see happen all of the time through some of the games that I watch, when I go to tournaments, I play against other people, or I'm helping our students on our Vanguard Tactics Academy learn a little bit more about some of the strategies that they need to employ to get them to be better army list writers. So the first thing, number 1, that people get wrong is that they try and do absolutely everything with their army list. They try and take all the toys, they try and take all the cool things, but what that fails to actually leave their army with is any form of cohesion. And what I mean by that is that the army doesn't really function in any particular way. You've got all these little units or huge characters doing sporadic things, but the army doesn't gel. It doesn't really have a theme, it doesn't really have a play style, and ultimately what ends up happening is that you're not getting the force multiplying effect by combining some units together, but then also having the abilities from characters, warlord traits and relics to support those units. So that's mistake number 1. And the best way to fix that is to really hone into a play style. Focus on an area of the game that you really enjoy, whether it's combat, shooting, psychic, and really lean into that play style, and then use your abilities, traits, stratagems, and then also add those units in that are going to support that play style the most. So the second biggest mistake that we see people making at the tabletop is not doing or not selecting the right weapons. They're not really having the right tools for the job. And this sometimes comes from not quite understanding what those weapons are really going to do at the table. And ultimately, again, trying to take one of maybe every single type of weapon. But what that ends up failing to do is when you're getting to the table, you're just going to find yourself not being able to destroy the units that you need to, not quite killing the enemy units, and ultimately just sort of not having the punch that you really want it to have. So when it comes to loading out your weapons, you really want to consider the utility of that weapon. What's its primary role? And then how are you going to use that on the table? So what's its range? How are you going to combine that with your movement? And then how does that start to affect your target priority at the table? Just to make sure that you can put in more than enough weapons of that type in order to destroy that enemy unit that you really want to get rid of. And that's really crucial. Because what you don't want to happen is when you're playing the game, constantly feel like you're not achieving what you really want, you're not achieving your mission, you're not achieving your secondary components, and ultimately your opponent's army just isn't quite reducing down at the same rate that yours is, and you're always going to feel like you're on the back foot. So really consider those weapon loadouts. And when you get your weapon loadouts right, it's not only going to help you achieve more at the table, but it's also going to speed up that gameplay. So focus less on taking one of absolutely everything, and sometimes take larger groups of the similar type of weapon so you can really hit home exactly what you need to. And the third type of mistake that we see, and this is really common, is not justifying the unit's role on the table and its justification as to why it's in your list. You should always ask yourself the question why, and on the Academy we teach people to become much better critical thinkers and to really help those who are on our Academy self-evaluate, evaluate their list so that they can become decision makers at the table and also decision makers when it comes to the army list writing. Because making the right decision really stems from knowing the why and the importance of that justification of that unit. So for example, why might I take this unit over another? So that unit might have a primary role, which could be to help destroy my opponent's army, but then it could have a secondary and maybe even tertiary type of role on the table. And it's myself as a general that needs to know each unit's ability and why it's in my army list. So for example, how is this going to help me, most importantly, focus on winning the mission? So do I have a game plan? And then how do I use these units to help me achieve that game plan? Do I have the movement in this unit type to get me to a certain objective, to raise a banner, to get me to a certain part of the table, to get me and engage in all fronts? So how am I using my units to not only kill my opponent, which is a kind of sub element of the game, because the most important factor of the game is winning the mission and scoring your secondary objectives. So when you're writing your army list, first of all, justify their role of their ability to help you in the mission rather than their ability to kill your opponent. So there are top 3 mistakes we see people make when it comes to writing a Warhammer 40k army list. And just to quickly recap, number 1 is taking absolutely everything that you possibly can and not having a play style. Number 2 is not having the right weapon loadout, not having the redundancy at the table, and not doing what you should be doing effectively. And number 3 is not having the justification for why you've got those units in your army and not understanding how they're actually going to help you win at the mission. So I hope you like this video, and we'll see you on the next one.